Crimea is on fire from Neptune strikes. Drone hit key factories in Saransk. Russia jets are fallen and Putin's army is now riding motorcycles. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Magura Sea drone just delivered a historic blow to the heart of Russia's pride. What's really going on? Is this the collapse of Russia's war machine? I'm Zaroslava Kolesnikova, this is Ukraine Today, and we are just getting started. Crimea is burning. Syrians hold across Crimea. In the same time moment, Russian forces shut down the Kerch Bridge. Why? Because something powerful was coming. Russia claims the peninsula was under attack by Ukrainian Neptune anti-ship missiles. Russia claims it shot everything down, but the fire in Crimea tells a different story. Explosions reported in Novorossiysk missiles over Sevastopol. Ukrainian firepower is hitting enemy troops and gear with daily precision. Where are the biggest breakthroughs happening? Find out in our next report.
Troopers continue to methodically drive them out of their fortifications, destroying enemy resources and maintaining the defensive line. The Pokrovsk direction is the hottest section of the front. Amid constant massive assaults with up to 100 attacks per day, the Russians are strengthening logistics and engineering cover, particularly near the village of Kalivka on the E50 highway, where the enemy is constructing net tunnels to protect equipment from FPV drones. These engineering structures allow for the supply of resources towards Selidov and Novohrodivka, key nodes of the offensive. This indicates long-term preparation to maintain pressure in this direction. The enemy is trying to stabilize the rear and reduce the vulnerability of logistics. In the Kupiansk direction, preparations for a new offensive are underway. Russia is preparing for a summer escalation precisely here. The likely goal is to reach the Oskil River and the R79 highway, which would open a direct route to Kupiansk. But the situation is not easy for the enemy. The armed forces of Ukraine are destroying pontoons, which stops the mass transfer of enemy equipment. Fighting is taking place in forest belts and fields. The advancement is minimal. The enemy has also started using fishing nets, which create corridors for equipment. They are less explosive for FPV drones compared to chain-link fences. Russia is trying to find solutions for anti-drone defense ahead of a possible summer offensive, but the armed forces of Ukraine are successfully disrupting the enemy's logistics at water crossings and supply routes. The strategic picture is as follows: anticipation of summer escalation in both the Pokrovsk and Kupiansk directions. Active preparations for the offensive are being recorded. Massive assaults, engineering structures, defense of logistical chains. Analysts predict that it is in the summer of 25th year that Russia might attempt to execute a large-scale breakthrough. However, the actions of the armed forces of Ukraine, the destruction of pontoons, drone attacks and coordinated defense are already hindering Russian plans. Russia continues its attempts to advance in the west, but is forced to improvise with logistics, engineering and even drone defense tactics.
From the Black Sea to the Russian heartland, Ukraine's message is clear. No bridge, no port, no city is out of reach. The storm is here, and it's only getting stronger. Fire and mental rain down on Saransk. Ukrainian drones struck a target Russia never thought could burn, the only fiber optic plant in the entire country. Optic fiber systems located in Mordovia, 1,200 kilometers from Ukraine's border, is no more. A key nerve is Russian state infrastructure shattered. This same factory was hit once before in April. They didn't learn. Now it's a warning etched in smoke. From the strikes above Mordovia, Ukraine just proved there are no safe zones left in Russia.
Вот дым идет. Дым вот идет. Что-то долбанули, короче. Нет, он там.
Welcome to the area of long-range justice. Russian aviation is disappearing from the sky, whipped by Ukrainian Zgur. The footage is stunning. The dictator is in panic mode. On the edge of being cancelled, a strike on Red Square not feels possible. On the battlefield, Putin is losing ground fast. Ukrainian forces dominate the skies. Their drones and air assault work is next level. How does Ukrainian keep the enemy trembling? All the details right now.
An unprecedented incident occurred in the Black Sea waters. For the first time in the history of world wars, a naval drone destroyed not one but two enemy fighters at once. These were Russian Su-30s that were attempting to counter Ukrainian naval drones. But instead of being hunters, they became the prey. This strike marked a true breakthrough in the field of asymmetric warfare. Previously, unmanned platforms had only managed to shoot down helicopters. Specifically, Ukrainian forces had already accounted for two Mi-8s, eliminated in similar operations. But for the first time, combat aviation was targeted by a maritime drone. According to reports, one of the enemy jets was shot down near the port of Novorossiysk, Urash, where operatives from the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine were working closely with the security service and defense forces. The fighter jet was hit by a missile launched from the Magura maritime drone platform. These drones have repeatedly inflicted significant losses on the Russian Federation's fleet. The Russians could not conceal the scale of the failure. Mentions of luring immediately began to appear in Russian telegram channels. This is how they refer to the Ukrainian tactic where drones approach targets, provoking enemy aircraft to take off. At that moment, a precise strike is delivered on the aircraft. In fact, Ukrainian maritime drones have become not only a means of attack but also a trap. This incident once again underscores that the Russian army, despite all claims of full control over the maritime space, has lost the initiative even at its own naval bases. Ukrainian drones are no longer just breaking through to coastal infrastructure, they are effectively destroying aerial targets, changing the rules of the game at sea. The Russian authorities once again demonstrate that even Victory Day can be conducted in the context of bunkers and electronic warfare. On May 9th, the Kremlin announced a ceremonial military parade in Moscow. However, the preparations for it look more like an evacuation than a celebration. The festive initiative turned out to be so appealing and safe that all the foreign guests who were planned to be invited suddenly fell ill en masse. None of the leaders of friendly countries wanted to take the risk, even for the sake of the red carpet under the Kremlin walls. Meanwhile, the military equipment that was supposed to be displayed at the parade was hastily covered with camouflage nets. The problem was that there weren't enough nets and some equipment had to be covered literally with scraps. But the most telling step was the decision to activate electronic warfare systems in the city for the entire day of the parade. Because of this, it was officially announced in Moscow, there will be no mobile connection. The formal explanation is as follows: due to the holding of festive events. How exactly the internet interferes with the festivities is not specified. The culmination was the statement by Press Secretary Peskov saying that President Putin will not be able to attend the parade in person this year due to a tight schedule, so he will join via video link. Evidently, a tight schedule is synonymous with the word fear, because a parade, where even the commander-in-chief does not dare to appear, physically looks more like a target than a celebration. And the real reason seems obvious. Fear of drones, which have already flown deep into the rear of the Russian Federation several times. And even Russia's main propaganda event, the Victory Parade, is turning into a parade of paranoia. Meanwhile, the operators of the Phoenix unit's strike drones reported another successful week of work on the front line. In the past 7 days, the fighters managed to destroy a significant amount of Russian equipment and personnel, inflicting noticeable losses on the enemy. In particular, during the execution of combat missions, they destroyed Tor M2 anti-aircraft missile systems, 2 Mr. S's self-propelled artillery units, 3 tanks, 30mm caliber guns, 17 military trucks, and 3 passenger cars used by the occupiers. These targets were hit using FPV drones, guided drops, and other means that the Phoenix unit effectively utilizes in the combat zone. Thus, in just 1 week, the enemy lost equipment equivalent to the armament of several companies. The strike work of Phoenix once again proves air control and precise targeting are the key to destroying enemy resources without direct confrontation. Airborne operations at their peak, results of the 3rd Battalion of the 79th Brigade for April. The fighters of the 3rd Airborne Assault Battalion of the 79th Separate Airborne Assault Brigade continue to destroy the enemy daily, demonstrating skill and coordinated work during combat operations in the Donetsk region. In April 2025, the unit inflicted significant losses on the occupiers, carrying out precise and effective airstrikes, primarily using strike UAVs. Every destroyed tank, truck, or bunker is not just a technical target, but a reduction in the combat capabilities of the Russian army. Currently, the battalion is performing the most complex tasks in the defense of the settlement of Constantinople, located in the Donetsk region. This direction remains one of the hottest on the front line. And it is there that the paratroopers consistently demonstrate their endurance, determination, and professionalism. While the enemy tries to advance, Ukrainian paratroopers continue to methodically drive them out of their fortifications, destroying enemy resources and maintaining the defensive line.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Russia is now sending motorcycle units to the front, and here's why. Ukrainian FPV drone operators have become so precise they can destroy target as big as car in seconds. Even Russian experts admit it, drones are ruling the battlefield. More in our next report.
Alexander Motuzyanik and these, let's say, motorcycle units have already appeared to intensify the combat engagement. Naturally, today, tactical methods are being developed on our side as well to counteract this. It's clear that the target is small, and it's actually very difficult to hit it with a drone. That's obvious.
Anatoly Novikov, as experts note, the Kremlin is switching to motorcycle groups for several reasons. The main reason is, of course, the significant increase in the number of FPV drones of the armed forces of Ukraine. The Russians themselves do not hide the fact that Ukrainian UAV operators have become so skilled at destroying their counterparts that a target in the size of even a passenger car is no longer a problem for them. Therefore, Russia is now looking for the smallest and fastest means of transportation possible.
Dmitro Butsko, more maneuverable than a car. And also, even if you take these FPV drones, well, I don't think they would use FPV drones just for, say, a motorcycle.
Anatoly Novikov. Moreover, the tactic of advancing on motorcycles seems to be initiated directly from the Russian General Staff, as satellite images regularly capture training of future suicide attackers on two-wheeled vehicles at the training grounds. In turn, armored vehicles are practically not used in the exercises.
Ihor Rain. If operators see an armored personnel carrier, it's clear it's a crew. It's about a dozen orcs. It's a combat vehicle. Destroying one such combat vehicle immediately multiplies the result by 10. A motorcyclist, a lone motorcyclist, or a lone running orc, yes, it's a target, but you need to scale it 10 times to destroy each one individually. So the Russian suicide troops are trying to use all possible light means of transportation to increase their mobility.
Anatoly Novikov. However, analysts note that in this way the Russian command is primarily preserving equipment, not people. Since the beginning of the full-scale war, Russia has already lost over 10,500 tanks alone. So the remnants of the surviving armored vehicles are now being guarded like the apple of their eye.
Ihor Rain. In 70 to 80% of cases, the use of heavy armored vehicles, especially tanks, involves tasks that are not typical for tanks. This is essentially performing artillery operations from concealed positions, not tank battles.
Anatoly Novikov. Meanwhile, no one intends to preserve the assault troops. Got on a two-wheeler, and off you go. The occupiers, on the other hand, try to protect themselves, habitually using old tactics like grills on armor.
Announcer on a motorcycle. This is the kind of protection. They made a mesh. Is this how you'll protect against FPV?
Yes.
And are you going to use it for combat missions or evacuation?
For combat missions.
For combat missions. On such a beauty, it needs to be painted green.
Anatoly Novikov. However, the idea of protecting with a mesh over the motorcycle from a strike drone is absurd, as the debris will still fly towards the driver. Therefore, more experienced motorcycle assault troops say, if you hear a Ukrainian drone, only your reaction can save you.
Kirilo, at the very last moment, yes, when you already feel it at the back of your head, you need to move left or right. This can save your life.
Anatoly Novikov. It is worth mentioning that there are motorcycle units in the Ukrainian army as well. However, they are used in a completely different way. Instead of senseless frontal assaults, our military bikers operate under air cover and ride not so much for attacks, but for delivering ammunition and supplies, as well as for evacuating the wounded.
Alexander Motuzyanik. We also adopt some elements of enemy tactics, among other things. We also have units that have mounted these metal steeds and will also be harassing the forward positions of the Russian troops. Therefore, we take the best, use the best, including what the enemy has, and prepare countermeasures.
A defeat Russia never saw coming and will never forget. Ukraine's Magura C drone just made history. GUR operatives pull off an operation no one has dared before, striking deep into the symbol of Kremlin power. A blow so bold, the working is watching. Full details right after this.
No one had done this before them. For the first time in history, Ukraine shot down a military aircraft with a naval drone. Our GUR confirmed the destruction and published this video as proof.
This, by the way, is not the first instance of the destruction of Russian aviation. But before this, it was helicopters.
A day later, some details began to emerge. In particular, the head of the GUR, Kirilo Budanov, clarified in an interview with the Warzone that 3 unmanned Magura V-7 boats participated in the attack, 2 of which fired at the planes. In the process, 2 Russian Su-30SM attack aircraft were destroyed. One of the crews perished, while the other managed to eject. The Russians immediately sent a civilian vessel for him, hoping that Ukraine would not violate the rules of war and fire upon civilians.
Despite the fact that the Ukrainians had numerous opportunities to destroy this civilian cargo ship along with the Russian military crew, they did not take advantage of it. They saw how the crew was being evacuated. They circled around the crew, who were struggling in the water. Nevertheless, they did not fire a single shot at either the cargo ship or the crew.
Also, it seems that the situation has become clearer regarding which missiles the Ukrainian Magurs were firing. In particular, a photo of a sea drone equipped with an American AM-9 air-to-air missile appeared online. Previous versions of the Bayraktar were armed with Soviet IR-73 missiles.
What is its uniqueness? What is its uniqueness? Well, indeed, it's in the fact that its surface remote control system, specifically remote, which is very important, managed to shoot down a manned object. And if we talk about the cost of the Magur, which is around 250 NARS to $300,000, and the cost of the Russian Su-30, which is $40 to $50 million, you can calculate how many times cheaper it means destroyed an expensive one.
Meanwhile, analysts are divided. The issue here is not even about the money, although the Kremlin repeatedly faces problems with it as well. The main issue is the technologies and production capacities, which in Russia are either lost or in huge deficit due to Western sanctions.
Each Su-30SM aircraft is worth its weight in gold. It's about the components. They are difficult to procure bypassing the sanctions. Moreover, as far as I know, Su-30SMs are either not being produced at all or are barely being produced.
Besides the obvious result of destroying Russian aircraft, this attack also brought another advantage to the Ukrainian armed forces. The enemy is not completely subdued, but they are definitely in a state of terror. Having lost 2 colleagues and apparently hearing about 2 more who unexpectedly ended up in the Black Sea, one can only imagine the mood with which they will now embark on missions, die in the Black Sea area.
The crews of Russian aircraft flying over the Black Sea area now understand that they no longer have the assurance of safety. Even if they don't see our weapons, they see their targeting radars, which doesn't mean that these weapons aren't there. And these weapons, these samples of armaments, have precisely targeted their aircraft.
It's not easier, by the way, for the pilot's command either, because even if the radars detect Ukrainian Magurs, it will no longer be followed by an unequivocal command to launch the aircraft. Since the leadership of the Russian Air Forces now understands, it's far from certain that the next pilots will manage to come out unscathed.
Every time the Ukrainians launch an operation in the Black Sea, it presents Russia with a difficult choice of what to lose. Oil and gas platforms, or let's say, some other rigs in the Black Sea. Or for instance, their assets in Crimea. Because these unmanned boats can also be accompanied by drones. In other words, they are like mini aircraft carriers. Or perhaps they might have to lose another helicopter or a Su-30SM.
all for now on Ukraine Today, your full frontline update. Subscribe to stay informed and never miss what matters most. And most importantly, become a sponsor of our channel. Support Ukrainian journalists who, despite the war and everything Russia thought at us, continue to create real news and stand for the truth, so you can hear it. Join us, be part of the truth, be part of Ukraine Today.